The other thing, so we can talk about the matrix now?
Yes.
And let's see, review the matrix and, okay, yeah. Okay. And the other thing, I like to do at the end of the meeting, if we can, we don't adjourn anymore, we don't have that motion to adjourn. I'd kind of like to have maybe a wrap up or summary, so go over, like, this last meeting with Lee, when we discussed it. Just a settled item, and we can kind of, and I think it'll help Sabrina with the minutes.
Let's remember too.
You know, this would, yeah. Obviously, because it was brought up, but.
You kind of suggested like action items or something
And,
like that?
and stuff like that, yeah, and but just, here's what we covered tonight, this is what we covered tonight, and, you know, this is, you know, this happened, you know, this blah, 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 and everybody kind of walks away on the same page, you know. Right, and if there's any action items or follow-up for, you know, subsequent meetings or something like that, so. All right, so, matrix, review the matrix for annual comparison for sales tax ballot revenue uses. We have, what's here is the latest version of the matrix. Pete, you brought up some, I think you said you had a couple of comments.
Yeah, I got several, but they're all kind of small. I do want to emphasize that without the sources of the funds, we can't do our job.
Right.
And the main thing there, Sabrina, is if, you know, we're going to add $17 million into street repairs from this fund, how do we know that they put that money in and they took $17 million away from another source? So did the funding for street repairs go up by $17 million? Or did it stay the same and they just replaced sales tax money and took away money from another source?
Somewhere else.
Which would not be consistent with kind of what the ballot measure was about.
But if it happened, it happened, and that's what.
If it happened, it happened.
Right.
And that's
But
what we
no.
will report on.
But
So,
then we report, yeah.
We're gonna report.
But we need that.
Yes.
Without those details, we can't actually do our job. And we can get into that into the letter. as I
The
call it.
other thing that came up in my, maybe, once again, from my perspective, was that I was interested in knowing what form the data was going to be provided to us by Lee Wilcox's operation, so that we wouldn't necessarily have to redo a bunch of stuff. I like to repurpose data when I get it, okay? So the data comes out of somewhere, he compiled that data, and it'll be in some kind of form,
The budget office compiled the data.
whatever, and then he's got to give us this data, and that was another thing, see how it is,
It's literally have a case.
so that we can present it and repurpose that, and I use the city auditor's report where that data comes in, and you guys maybe make a pie charts or some graphs or something like that, so that in our report, we'll have some information and they can see it, you know, okay, there's a pie chart, and this segment was this segment was that, and people kind of get it, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to go play,
Sure. No,
don't get me
it's fine.
wrong, I'm just trying to, presenting statistical data is kind of mundane. I think the city auditor did a fantastic job of doing that, her report. That's just a classic example on how to do stuff. And I don't want to emulate, I just want to use some of the things in there as an example of what you can do with data, make it presentable and understandable and you know, not, you know, just easy. Because I'm thinking of the audience is going to be someone who is average person. They're going to want to know that comes to the neighborhood commission. We've got people from the community comes in there and they're going to look at the report. And these are the people that we need to kind of make sure they understand that. I mean, that's my feeling. That's where I'm coming from.
Now, the budget office, I'm assuming that it takes them quite a bit of work to be able to pull these numbers out for us. And I think my point is, where do we fall in the budget scheme? I know in the Neighborhoods Commission we asked for certain things, and it was staff time and money going out. Do we fall under a separate category where that excuse couldn't be used in regards to?
Well, this is a requirement because rules has made it so. So because this had to go to rules to be approved as a standing committee, part of the decision goes along with that, as I understand, is that it's going to require additional staff time.
Right.
Yeah.
Do they realize
Now,
that?
Well, this is a different question, right? Like, I can go and talk to the budget office until I'm blue in the face. Right now, they're doing a mid-year budget review, so they've been overwhelmed currently because of what they need to do with the budget process, and because they're starting to prepare the internal budget information so that the initial pass can go up to council, and then council can do their back and forth, and that takes April. So they're doing sort of two things. This information they kind of wedged in between mid-year budget review and preparing the final end of year, the next fiscal year budget. So my saying this was approved by rules and additional staff time should be allocated to it is not going to go far.
Okay. I'd like to comment on that if I may. This is kind of increased scope or added scope for the neighborhood commission, which is fine. I mean, you know, that's not necessarily negative. Measure B has some expenses and costs involved with it as a normal course of business. Measure B is over here, and I think it's appropriate. There's admin costs and other costs associated with Measure B to administer it, okay? Because it's a Measure B. I think it's totally appropriate for some Measure B funds be used to, let's say, support this committee, okay? I think that's appropriate because this is a committee dedicated to Measure B and the outcome of Measure B, how those funds are being used, and your time or additional time, if there was some research time that has to be put in by some data processing people. Lee said that there's independent auditor was tasked by the city for several different tasks other than this Measure B, but I think any time spent by this independent auditor on Measure B would be, that particular time charge for that would be an appropriate charge against Measure B. And what we're talking is mouse noise to $40 million, let's say annually, okay? We may be talking $10,000 or maybe we're talking $25,000, and I'm just wagging out of my head to do that.
I can respond and say that if there is a cost associated with an independent auditor, that's a single line item. That's a relatively easy thing to pull out. And other administrative costs, depending on how that's organized, that's, I should think, relatively easy. If we're starting to talk about staff time spent on this, we've had this conversation before when it came last year with regards to, you guys are all looking for like how much. The thing is, the city does not actually sit down. We allocate portions of people overall, but nobody sits down and tracks their hours. It would require a lot of back work to get people to figure that stuff out, and or we would have to add on to all of our days time spent outlining in our Outlook calendars how much we did in a single activity. That's just not going to happen. We don't have a procedure. We don't have a way of measuring.
That's not your normal way of doing business.
Yeah.
Let me just say that for probably a better part of 40 years, that's the way I did business. Okay, and I was audited by that, and we had what we call work breakdown structures that this organization can function under, okay, with appropriate charges. You do not need to get into the weeds. There are ways to
that would require
really,
a implementation at a much higher
no,
level than I
but I'm
have.
saying that this exists.
I know it exists. I know it exists
I worked
for profit a long time ago.
No, I mean, I worked in the defense industry. We were audited by the federal government as well as our own internal auditors. Yeah. And that's the way we did business. And let me tell you, I managed many cost accounts that had to adhere to that, and there were consequences.
And I worked for a nonprofit that had to report things to the federal government.
Right.
We tracked our time that way.
But I'm saying, but all I'm saying is, so at some point in time, you know, that excuse that we don't do business that way is, at some point in time, there may be a situation that says, hey, maybe you need to do business that way.
You guys can put this
into
your report annually. This is something you guys can do.
I have a question, similar to what Gary's talking about.
Yeah.
The independent auditor, whomever that is,
Yeah.
do they have deliverables to the city that they're delivering a certain amount of hours? And are they billing the city for their hours dependent upon this?
That is, I'm not involved with that because I'm involved with you guys as a committee. And my understanding is that still hasn't been worked out exactly who is going to be
Yeah, if it
doing
goes
the
back
auditing
to
of
if
this.
they're working on it, then they'd be billing the city for working on it, and
Yeah.
how much is that costing?
Yeah, that would have a cost
And that would
associated with
pertain
it.
to us, you know, part
The
of what-
final number, and I said that,
Yeah.
that number I can pull out.
Okay.
That's a line item, that's simple. The same way that if there is a cost related to whoever it is at the state who's collecting this, I cannot remember the name of the agency. If there's a cost with that, that would be a simple line item. I'm saying if we're talking about staff hours internals of the city, that is where I have difficulty producing information for you guys. Because it's just not the way, there's no systemic thing in place to track people's hours that way.
And this is just an observation, I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm just
But if you
saying.
guys are saying, I mean, that's legitimate feedback you can provide as a committee when it comes to doing your job. You're allowed to say, we've run into this problem. We would encourage the city to transition its, I don't know, time management system or something. But,
And those things have already been invented.
yeah, they've already been,
Right?
I know they've already
I
been
mean,
invented, but I'm
what
saying.
normally organizations do is they tailor those for their operation,
Mhm.
you know, and so my company's operation did it this way, they used the same thing, Lockheed did it differently, you know, and other company, you know, General
Yeah,
Dynamics
the
did it differently.
way it makes
But
sense for them.
essentially, you know, they were all apples and apples, you know, they pretty much tracked, because on the auditing process by the government, believe me.
I'd like to report out, Grant.
Anyway.
Has
So-
the independent auditor filed a report yet? And if
No, because there's
when-
not been one selected, so no.
Oh,
When were they gonna do that?
I
That was
don't
the
know.
next question.
I don't
Because
know
this
the
is-
answer to
We're
that
talking
question.
about June of last year, June 30th of last year, right?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. Can we ask?
Yeah,
When is their report due? We don't care who it is, what they're being paid, all we know is when they're gonna get their information, right?
So Gary, can I just bring you here? So my understanding from when we met, this committee, as a committee, alone, is that we were going to meet after our neighborhood commission meeting to approve a letter to kind of like squeak a little like, hey, we need this information, you know, to go a little bit above me. But that night during the meeting, my understanding is that we were told that, yeah, we were going to be getting that information so that by this meeting, we could be diving into the data.
Right.
Am my understanding correct? 'Cause
Yes,
I'm-
you
I
are.
think
I
that's-
didn't bring my notes from last time. So then, which brings us back to we're back at the exact same spot where we were at when we concluded our last meeting. I feel like we didn't have a lot of progress, and I feel like everybody's we're all getting ready, you know, we're rolling up our sleeve, we're getting our tools.
there is
ready.
actually more information in here. I know it doesn't look like it,
Oh, there is a lot.
but there is actually more information in the new matrix.
Mm.
So there is confirmation of money being spent according to what it was supposed to be happening. And moving forward, there is information about, some of this was only meant to be one-time funding, so it's not going to be repeated. At least it's not budgeted to be repeated. And some of the stuff that is ongoing, it shows you, like especially if you look at, which one is this one, transportation, or police.
Yeah.
Improved police response, ongoing but deferred to 2017-18, and then ongoing but deferred to June 2019. You have information that that money is supposed to roll over, but it isn't currently budgeted to roll over. So there is more information in here from the budget office than you had before. I understand the historic information is missing, which I've written down. And I even wrote down the example you gave me so I can make sure I can articulate it well.
I'll come talk with you if you want. You
Well,
wanna drag me in?
I understand it. I mean, like, you need to come talk to somebody else.
Oh.
The thing is. But
But, you know, even if that improved police response, even if it was deferred, that first column is this year, or was last year's
it's
money.
last year's money.
So if they deferred, it means they thought they were gonna spend $3,260,000 on improved police, but they did not. And that's all we really have to report.
Yeah.
yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that, no, that didn't happen.
So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The information about 2016-17 is in here now as opposed to before when you only had the proposal. Now you have the actual. So you have both. It's just you don't have the historic information.
Yes.
So from what
I'm
you're
gonna
saying,
break
tell me if I'm wrong on this one, like the expand police recruitment, that's one-time funding. So that would be the one-time funding out of that particular pot that was collected.
Right.
The recruitment, or, yes?
Yeah, expand.
Last
police
page.
recruitment. Yeah, the last page.
Top at the
Okay,
top.
we're looking at a different one than I was.
That's 1.5 million.
Yes, that's one-time funding.
One time, so that's probably be taken off for.
For future, unless it's not currently budgeted for future ones.
I would think it would be, but that's just my.
Well, yes and no, I mean,
They're
you don't know,
continuing
we
to
still
hire,
need to
in
hire.
essence.
But at some point in the future, it probably will completely drop off if we're doing all right, yeah.
That was one of my
Um,
questions.
So,
So we have these categories, and it's categorized under public safety, transportation, public safety, and other, those are the three, that was, anyway, I have to go back.
and this is my other question for you guys. The budget office gave you the information in this format.
Yeah.
There's no previous format that I have received. This is the format that they responded to me in. If there is a different format in which you would like information to come to you, I need to know what that is. Because our understanding was this was our working document, so it was going to be in this.
That is the working
Mhm.
document.
Mhm.
That is the working document, and from that, we will look at that, and then whatever.
This can get turned into a
historical-
pie chart from
Well,
this. I mean, if you
well,
want to
yeah,
make it, right?
well,
Like-
that'll be part of our finding,
Yeah.
yeah, well, that will be in the report, I would think. But we need another column or so on here, so that we can have some comments in there. You know, we need to discuss as a group, go over each one of these items, like, for example, street repair, and what's our comment on that? I mean, we have some comments, is it okay with us, are we okay with that particular issue, and then move on to the other one, which is improve fire medical response, okay, and then whatever that was, and then the notes in here, and then, have a consensus. My feeling is we should have a consensus on each one of these items as to whether things are, and then from that we'll compile a final report, okay? But we need to do it, so we need another column, on this thing,
Okay.
that we can, comment on.
Sure.
This is
It's just not gonna
Excel,
fit on
right?
one page, yeah.
Yeah.
Remember when we talked about getting this in Excel, that was specifically what the purpose was? So that we
So
could
that
get all
we
the
could add the
breakdowns,
historical stuff
we
over
get all
time.
the elements of
Right.
this
Yeah.
that add up to the 17,700,000.
Right.
But we have all those individual numbers, and that was the whole
So you
idea,
want-
so then we could burp it out into
So
whatever
the sources,
format.
that's what you're asking
Yes.
for, broken
Yes.
out in here,
Yep.
I will see.
So this is one
I
source to
suspect-
the street repair fund. There are many other sources to street repairs, and we need all
Yes.
of those.
I suspect there's going to be a difference of opinion for how this gets implemented, but I will bring it back.
Well, I think one thing we learned last time with Lee, I don't know that the city has a sense of what they want from us.
I think that's 100%.
So how do we get past that impasse? I thought we had broken it last time, and it
Well, I
doesn't seem
think
that we have.
from Lee's perspective, you did to some extent, because he was coming at this from you're looking toward future budget years,
Yeah.
and you guys were all like, no, we're looking at the past, so this
Yeah.
should be simpler to do. So then he imparted that to the budget office, who was like, okay, so this is the one year we've implemented, let me see what we've done, and what we proposed, and what got done. That information is here. I think when I bring back, I would like all of the sources of funding to show that there was an overall increase of 17.7 million
Yes.
in the transportation for street repair. I think that is where people are gonna be like, you've gotta be kidding me. Because the way the budget is organized, and I don't work in the budget office, but this is what they tell me. The way the budget is organized, that requires somebody going in and like disaggregating data in a way that they don't currently have it organized. So it's like a really hard thing to do and a lot of hours.
Well, then ask what the alternative is.
Okay?
It doesn't have to be that way, that's the only way I
Well,
can think.
and that's
So
fine.
if they've
And
got an
if
alternative for us to get the
if that's the
detail.
conversation we need to have, then I already told Lee that I knew we were gonna have to come back again, is to have him come back into the next time and talk about, well, then what is the alternative? We need there's a mismatch in understandings that
Yeah,
are
we
happening
need a
here.
common language.
Yeah.
Or clear text, whatever, however you want to phrase it. We need to be able to understand each other and to be able to articulate that in our summary report. And it's making it difficult for us to do that if we're not talking the same language.
I'm having a really hard time understanding this. This committee reports to Lee?
This committee reports to the Neighborhoods Commission.
Okay.
You
and
guys
so-
report to the
right.
Neighborhoods Commission.
And where does this information go besides the Neighborhoods Commission?
After, so part of what the Neighborhoods Commission as a whole, you guys are doing a lot of the legwork for that toward the end, is you guys have to put out something at the end that says, we have looked at how the Measure B funds were spent, and here is our opinion. It goes to mayor and council, ultimately.
Through the city manager's office.
Through the city manager's
Really,
office, like,
because
for-
my feeling on this was that it was going to go to the neighborhood commission. We were going to provide
Yeah.
to the neighborhood commission, and the neighborhood commission would say yay or nay, okay, and whatever the outcome of the neighborhood commission was, and then it would go to the mayor and the city council, not necessarily, and copy to the city manager's office, but not necessarily through the city manager's office. Now, that was, maybe I misunderstood that.
Well, I think that's because all the letters are gone through
Okay, but my.
the staff
Okay,
person in my
if that's
position.
true, but with the sense I had on that was there would be no changes or modification to what we
Oh, no, there
proposed.
wouldn't be, the
Okay.
same way, but
'Cause that has-
every single letter
That
you
has
guys,
happened before.
that there's been changes
Yes.
from what the Neighborhoods Commission
Yes.
has officially decided?
Yes.
When did that happen?
Some time ago, before your tenure.
Okay, well, that is not the way I would expect things to go, so.
Me too. Well, me too.
Just to be
Once
clear.
something is approved by the neighborhood commission, whatever it is, that we did, then that should go unaltered in that state
Yes.
to the mayor and the city council.
What you're saying, it would go through the city manager's office, if what you just told us a few minutes ago, would go through Lee Wilcox.
No, Lee is in
Because he's in
charge of
charge
this
of us.
this subdivision, so, well, let me see. If there are issues that come up with regards to this information, I share it with Sulma, because she is my direct supervisor, so she manages my workflow. But if it's a more systemic issue, then it goes to Lee. That's not just the stuff that happens with the ICOC, that's anything from now on.
Right.
I would pass this along with a CC to both of them, because they would be aware, they've been aware of this
Yeah.
moving forward, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the final work product is not gonna be like a shocker to them.
Right.
No,
Or it comes out of the commission.
Right, it should-
And I don't think they should be out of the loop for being copied or anything like that.
No, but that's what I'm saying, is it would be
uh,
coming, it would be going in that process. And sometimes, so for example, with your budget letter, with the budget letter, that goes in as an MBA, as a mayor's budget addendum, which is a mechanism of the city manager's office. It's a mechanism the city manager's office manages, right? That's how your budget letters go in every single year. It could be that it's going to be another MBA. There will be a independent citizen oversight letter, which would be an MBA of some number, and then there would be a budget letter, which would be a different MBA. I'm not sure of the process exactly, because it's the first time I'm
I'm not
doing
looking
it, but.
for an adversarial.
No,
kind of
and
thing
this
here.
isn't, I don't.
No, really,
I
and
just-
that's not my,
But-
please, that's
I'm
not
just
my.
trying to understand the
Yeah.
flow, the flow of it, how it goes.
What I feel a little bit naive about is, okay, so who proposed the tax? And it was written by someone in the city or policymaker of some sort. So how can you write a proposal for a tax that requires citizens' oversight and not build in the mechanism for that citizen group to be able to do their job and oversee and say yes or no? Yes, it was spent the way it was meant to, or no, it wasn't. So I mean, call me naive, but if I had written such a proposal, I would have made sure, that, okay, this is what I proposed, and this is how the Oversight Committee is going to get this information back over to us. And Leslie was someone at a very, very high level that didn't understand how the details worked. But it seems to me that if the budget office feels that it is a lot of work on their part, this is a requirement, and if they are spending the money in this just goes along with it. It's just, this is the string that's attached to it, and we need to be able to do our jobs. Otherwise, it's gonna seem like we did nothing but meet here for the last
This is
couple
where
of
we
months.
come back to the central issue of the tension here, which is that this is a general fund. It's not line item marked as it comes in, and then therefore there's no tracker for what happens once it comes into the pot, where it goes through and comes back out the other side. So that's,
Okay, so.
I mean, that's the tension between
Going-
having a
going
citizen's
to your-
oversight and a
to
general
your
fund
point.
item.
Going to your point. This was the argument in favor of Measure B, and it's just, Measure B is needed to improve police response time, needed to reduce response time to medical emergency, fight gangs, drug crimes. Measure B is needed to repair roads and infrastructure, okay, blah, blah, blah. Measure B has strong, this is from Mayor Liccardo, San Jose police officers, firefighters, and business leaders agree, okay? This is an argument in favor of the measure. Measure B has strong accountability provisions. It requires independent citizens' oversight and annual financial audits to help ensure funds are spent appropriately. Okay, and that's signed by Ricardo, Rob Davis, Matthew Madhood, Richie Conda, and Ivy Long. So, I mean, that's the argument in favor. I feel this is what made me vote for it.
I
That's why
understand, I'm totally in agreement,
Yeah,
and I will say, I think that there is a tension here about what gets put into writing in order to make it appealing to the voters, and then the actual implementation of it once it's happened. And there's a reason that there was no, I mean, they didn't even know necessarily, they said there would be a citizens oversight committee, but that could have been a newly created body, it doesn't have to be you guys, it
That's
just
right.
got assigned to
Absolutely,
you guys.
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Could ask for volunteers and say it
Could
was.
have been
Right.
changed, it could be, I mean, I don't know what it could change in the future, I'm just saying, there's an inherent contradiction underlying this, which is, I think, why we're having this, like, the city staff internally is like, well, we don't track our money that way, so there's no way we can produce this. And you guys are like, but then how or the hell are we supposed to do this job? And city staff is not giving you a good response necessarily for how that happens.
We throw one more factor into that, which is we go out of business on June 30th, and we keep moving the start date along because we don't have the information to go. At some point, we're not going to have enough time to do the work.
You guys
We, this
don't
committee.
go out of business.
No.
This is a
Yeah.
standing committee. So you
Right,
guys don't
yeah,
have
we
any
don't go
sunset
out of
date.
business. Right.
We don't go with
No,
the
we
commission.
don't have a
No,
sunset date.
no,
On June 30th, we don't
No,
go out of business.
no.
What if we're not here? We just repopulate the group?
yes.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
And the work continues
Some of us
without
are
you guys.
for election,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Whoever's even, who's in the even districts there?
Who's what?
Are you even,
Yes, they're
Are you
even.
even?
I'm fine,
No,
I'm
she's
fine.
you're
not.
fine,
Yeah.
okay, so.
3-4 of us will be out.
Your leg will be in charge?
Where you go, Rich?
I could
No,
be
he's-
replaced
no,
by
are you
someone
out?
more
He's
fabulous.
He's
yeah.
even,
He's
he's
even.
6.
They stay.
Oh, okay, so you two, okay.
6
you
and 10,
two.
6 and 10.
What about
stay.
Terry? What about Terry?
He's not.
Terry's 9.
Oh, he's.
So he's up
All
for
right.
election.
So we have a mix of body.
So the work continues the same way on another commission, and I say this because the Human Services Commission, when I started with them, was still dealing with a letter from like 2 commissions prior to them, which at that point doesn't make a lot of sense, but
I have a question in regards to what Gary said. So the mayor, he endorsed the oversight committee.
Yeah.
Is there any way for us to kind of get his take, since he wrote it in the voter manual, about what his idea was of this body?
I can certainly ask his staff. I'm probably not
Or
going to get time with
Can he
the
trickle
mayor
in for like
himself.
2 minutes
Can we move
and
forward with our letter like we were going to do?
just to give us a,
Will you talk about it?
Yeah, let's, when we get to the letter, let's look at that, because I think that's a great idea. Just to elevate the
Yeah, and I don't want to,
Yes.
once again,
yeah, he's in the voter panel, he happens.
You said this.
Yeah,
Where is
come
he?
tell us what your vision was when you wrote that.
there has to be some there needs to be some credibility with what we produce, that the citizens, like, who voted for this, to say, yeah, they looked at it, and chips are gonna fall where they are. I mean, either the money was spent like they would like it, or it wasn't, but at least it's a credible report that people can say, yeah, it's objective, and it's credible, and, it's not a rubber stamp. That's kind of where I'm
So,
No, and
are we at the letter point, or can I ask a question about the matrix?
Well, we were talking about the
We're
matrix.
still talking about the
Okay.
matrix, yeah, as far as I know.
Yeah, move
We haven't talked about the charter
What,
yet.
do you have another
So the
question
letters
on that?
after the
I
charter.
did about the matrix. When it gets to the other section,
Yes.
I was wondering if somebody could explain to me the shift to multi-source housing
Yeah.
fund. I mean, what does that entail?
What does that entail? I
Or
don't,
what
I don't know
is
the
that
answer.
about?
That I can ask budget people, because I don't.
Well, here's my read of this. This is that whole sources and uses part of city budgeting and stuff like that, and that says that they're not gonna hit the Measure B pile for the $2 million in the next years. They're gonna go to that, to the multi-source housing fund as the source that they're trying to put into that.
So this
So
is
that they
a
will continue
one-time?
to
So that-
spell,
yes.
it was one-time funding.
Yeah.
It would effectively be one-time funding. It came out of Measure B one time. They're still going to be spending, so I'm understanding what you're saying. You're going to still be spending $2 million, but it's not coming from Measure B.
Because on that other matrix we had, I think it was the 17, 18,
Yeah.
they had this on there. So this is the 16, 17, right?
Right.
Yes.
Which is all we're working on right now, by the way, 16.
Historic,
Okay.
So where it says.
with just 1 year of like sense of maybe where it's going, which is why that information's on here.
So it should say one-time funding instead of ongoing?
Well,
That
it
would
was
seem to
supposed
me-
to be ongoing funding initially. So I think that's where the note comes in for the future, is that it will not be effectively ongoing. It will be
One time.
one time. So that can be changed in this box too.
Could you get some clarity on those two things?
Yes.
Is
I
it
wrote it
one time
down.
or ongoing, and then is that what that means, the shift to multi-source?
Is that it
housing
is
fund?
effectively ongoing, but just not out of Measure B.
And it's off our
Yes.
table?
Yeah,
We
it's
don't
off
do
the
anything with it
table.
after that? That's the way I read that.
Yeah.
So they're gonna grab 2 million out of this first year, last
Right.
year. Then in future years, they're gonna get the source of the money from someplace else.
Yes.
So we gotta resolve this $2 million from 16, 17, but in the future, we're not gonna have to do it, unless they bring it back, but
Unless they bring it
that item
back,
will
yeah.
disappear.
That's where the one-time.
But I think that might,
box.
I think the thing for me was, is because I've already seen that, the matrix, and that was 17, 18, that was already back on there. And so
This
that-
is this version of the Matrix is the only version of the Matrix. Every time you guys have
Okay, so
seen
this
other
is
versions of the
16,
Matrix, they were just,
Yeah.
it's always been an ongoing document. It's changing. It's not like that was a historic version we're keeping in some extent. It had information in it.
Okay, so that one,
It's-
okay.
yeah.
But you're gonna find out. if those are-
Continuing-
I am gonna ask this
Okay,
question about
Continuing
ongoing.
Thank you.
On this, maybe we could kind of sort of end this. So if this matrix update needs to have a version on each iteration, okay, and that can go in the footer, okay, so we need to know what version of this we're looking
Like
at.
version 4.
Well, but it, well, whatever, but it just needs to be in the footer, in a date, but just the version, and also repeat, there's a selection in Excel where you can repeat the headers on each page, and then also put page numbers on there, like 102, 03, and all that, so we can kind of find that. And then add a column on there for committee comments, so that we can annotate each one of these rows, like for street repair, for improved fire medical response, and.
I'm
get a
sorry,
cons-
I'm writing down your notes and I'm like 3 notes behind.
Okay.
Can you go back?
Sure, okay, where are you?
I got the version number into the footer, so the headers are on every single page, and that's where I
Okay,
stuck.
and then the footer and the page numbers,
Page numbers.
right.
And then what else?
And then add a column at the, after you got the 2017, 2018 column, add another column there that says ICOC comments. And then that would be our discussion comments.
And that'll be ongoing also.
We'll have, yeah, we'll have a
Carry over to
consensus,
the next
ideally,
Version
we'll
5
have
or
a,
whatever.
we'd have a consensus on there for, we can talk street repair, whatever, and then we just put it in and move on to improve fire medical response. I mean, once we get done with something, for example, just homeless, we're done on homeless, we're done, we don't have to, we move on, put our efforts in what's left on our plate to kind of look at. Is that okay?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Along that lines of adding a column, I think we should be able to just drop the rightmost column, 17, 18.
Whatever,
We don't care.
I don't care, whatever.
That's
Doesn't
next
matter.
year's job. Right?
It only matters, for example, in what he was talking about, where if it's really not effectively ongoing for this particular thing.
Right, So we may need to print this out on legal size paper, but that's, you know, that's life. I'm used to working on my 17.
And then I needed some clarification on the street repair.
Yeah.
It says one-time funding, and I see that, and I understand where I think they're going with that. But that 17 million, I know that they're way behind, and there's so many repairs that number.
That was only for major streets and, I mean, the categories. It wasn't for all of the street repairs across the entire city. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying that, but I'm figuring that it can't be a one-time fund, because I don't think they fixed it all.
But that's one-time funding from us.
Injection.
From
Just
Measure
one
B,
year?
That's the
Measure
one
B,
source.
Baker.
Okay.
So they have other
Right.
funds that they go to. That's the whole point
Yeah,
of
and
getting these
that's,
sources. That's
You
the
know,
deal.
and that's, I think that's a decision. I mean, you know,
So
if they want to put Measure B funding into improve medical response instead, you know, the following year, whatever, that's their decision. As long as the funds stay within the Measure B parameters, they can slice and dice, you know, whatever.
But if you look in the description there, you talk about total amount allocated to pavement in 2016-17 would be 30.6 million. Okay?
That's an
That's your scanner, yeah, there are a couple of those in there. So basically what they're saying is they're gonna take 17.7 out of the Measure B funds, and they're gonna get 13 million from other sources.
Yeah.
And that's, again, that part, that's why we gotta nail down what are the other sources for these
Those
things.
numbers?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can't do it
Which is the
without that, yeah.
question I wrote down here
Yeah,
first.
so that's a great example of what
Yeah,
we
yeah,
need.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, because maybe it was gonna be 40 million, and they took some money and buried it off in flood response or something like that, which they're certainly capable of doing, and then they're gonna take 17 million out of the sales tax fund. We just need to know that the money they're taking is additional, it's not
Right,
displacing
right.
other funding.
It's a plus-up. So, you know, if street repair had a $100 million budget as a result of Measure B, it should be 117,700,000. That's a plus-up. That's a 17.7 plus-up.
Right,
that's the way I
for
look at it. I mean,
this
that's-
fund.
Yeah.
Yes, for
yeah.
this particular
And
item.
Yeah,
The
as
rest of
opposed
the
to
30.6
what
is
Pete
from some
said,
other fund.
it'd be, you know, 100,000 or whatever it was, minus that 17.7 to maintain what they thought was gonna be the budget. All right, so I think we relayed
I
it.
just just a couple more
Okay.
questions. Is there any significance to why one area is underlined and the others aren't
Oh.
underlined?
Where are we?
Station
Station 37, page 3.
That's underlined.
That's
but-
not underlined, it's crossed out.
Yeah, it's crossed.
Which one?
That's what it's
Crossed
supposed to be,
out?
it's supposed to be crossed out.
Oh, it looks like it's underlined to me.
Which one?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
meant to be crossed out, station 37.
Oh, okay, so that,
That's a cross-out?
Yeah, that it didn't end up happening, is
At
the
all.
feedback.
so the 2.2 million never happened at all. And so that, what,
So part of it is a difference between what the expected amount was and what actually got collected. That is not captured here, and that was a question I already had for the budget office, because 30 is what they were expecting, but I think they only collected 26. So,
Was that the
So they
original?
dropped the
See, here's where we get into the three-card Monte. So was that going to be, was that gonna happen, that 22 million, was that going to happen, and then because they didn't get the funds come in, they dropped that off there? Is that-
that's my question to the budget office.
Okay,
Because I'm like,
so
I
see,
see
that's
that
to
it's not here.
That needs to
It's
be
done.
reported.
Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
good finding, okay? They could not do that because expected revenues were less than what was anticipated, so they couldn't, that's
Right,
legit,
which is
that's a
totally
legitimate
fine, yeah.
finding.
It's just because there's no update over here on the total amounts, that's where I'm like, you just automatically totaled what's in the thing, but you didn't pull out the thing that wouldn't
Yeah,
happen,
and
so I'm like, so
and
what
then,
is
you know,
actually
we-
going on? And I know that we collected less.
We- You know, we're
So
getting,
what
see,
is
right away, I'm
happening?
getting.
and that, if we had to call it, we could comment on it.
Yeah, but the point, you know, so they didn't.
So if that's crossed out, then up above it says improve fire response, fire station 37 construction, it says one-time funding 960,000.
Previous page, page 2, on the bottom. In fact, there's no detail there.
There's no detail, yeah.
Or the next
So
one.
I
even.
was
I
confused
think there
about
used to
what-
be,
There did used to be.
yeah.
So was that like put back in?
The, is what put back in, I'm
Where it says
confused.
improve fire response, so the next column up. Actually, it's 2 columns.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's 2 columns up.
the
So is
960,000.
that like dumped back into the Station 37?
I think that that is the replacement for this, but it's really confusing to me,
Yeah.
which is why I put a
I'm
question into the
confused.
budget office, because I was like, why did you do this to me? Why is there suddenly, and I was like, did you just get rid of this? Because that's what it looks like. Is it that it got broken out into the previous 2 columns? What happened with, where's the $4 million that I
Right.
know we didn't collect? How can
No,
this all
we
still
didn't.
be,
And there was
At
supposed to
this
be
point.
2.1 million appropriated for it, and you were supposed to collect this other 2.2 for it. Now this is crossed out. Is there still money?
that's what I'm saying, is I'm wondering what budget's office interpretation of this was to me, is that they crossed this out and said, no, this isn't what happened.
Right.
Instead, we put part of that money here in the previous column and one other column. That's actually how the money got spent. It got spent differently than it was intended to in this other version. And
And
that would have been helpful if they kept it the way it was written, and then in this other section wrote, actually, this is what happened.
Deleted or
Right.
not funded.
That there
or
did, stuff did
unfunded
happen
or
with
not.
Station 37, but it wasn't a down payment on additional estimate, blah, blah, blah. This isn't, the description isn't what happened. These other 2 things happened. They put in some one-time funding to the station construction, and they increased 6 full-time positions for that station, but it doesn't even specify improved
No,
emergency
it doesn't
medical
say
response.
anything.
It doesn't say anything, so I don't know what that means.
Okay. Yeah, that was the, you're already on it. So-
Yeah, I already asked the question, because I was like, I don't know what this
looking at that and
means.
I'm going, But I thought it was underlined.
No,
I did too, yeah.
Okay.
it's crossed.
Yeah, I did too.
Right. Okay.
So for that, they allotted the 2 million?
Well, that's what's not clear to me. I'm not
You guys are right.
clear.
So you guys are at the 960,
Yeah,
Mhm.
and this is the question I've already asked, because I was like, I don't know what this means anymore. I'm confused.
Okay, if we go back to MBA 14,
Yeah,
there was only the page 2 one, include fire response time, and the total on it is 2,210,000. It looks to me like they took 960 of that 2 million and spent it, and then they're not gonna spend the rest. So they split this up into 2 pieces for whatever reason I don't understand, but there was only one before on MBA 14.
so you're saying they didn't spend that? They spent that?
Yeah, well, this is a separate one, but, yeah, they spent 960, and so that means there's, what, 1 million, whatever, $250,000 still on, laying around that they didn't spend. That's the way I interpret this, because
Yeah.
before it was only the one. So that item there, the fire response, Station 37 construction, that's a new, that was not on MBA 14.
yes.
So they spent the money there instead of this, and they eliminated the
And they
two.
limited the difference.
Well, that's my guess.
Yeah.
Or they
Well,
eliminate
that's
that
what
whole
I'm
item,
not gonna-
yeah.
that's
So I
what
asked
it
this
says.
question already.
Yeah.
I think I asked this question already because I was like, I don't know what's
Yeah.
happening here. And I'm confused, so I
So it
assumed
needs
everyone else would be
clarification.
confused. Yeah.
Okay.
And then improve emergency medical response, again, there's no,
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, is I don't know if that's where they channeled the remainder of that money. Because it wasn't. When I put this thing together, it had descriptions for all of those boxes. So these
Yeah.
other 2 boxes were created by them.
okay.
Yeah.
And you never got a description
And I,
from them.
well, yeah.
By the way, a couple more typos in improved burglary at the bottom of page 3. Looks like this was scanned. It's my bad, I bet they converted it from PDF.
Wait, where are we? Bottom of page 3 or what?
Bottom of page 3, improved burglary, neighborhood crime, adds ongoing funding, blah, blah, blah. Well, as equipment costs with a start date, ST6ART,
Oh, okay,
and streets, ready, READCY.
Let's see.
okay. What other typos were added, so I can
That,
just circle them?
You got the other one up there.
Yeah, I got the first one, yeah, on the first page.
That was under improved burglary and crime?
Yep,
Yeah.
that's in the description, you say.
It's just in the description, it's just,
Yeah.
I think it was scanned.
For police reports, sworn vacancies, the ACEA,
Right.
and the ACA.
What was street,
Oh, effective ongoing
READCY,
funding.
what is that?
Where are we going? Okay, multiple people talking, so I didn't think that-
Improve police response,
Mhm.
ongoing funding.
funding instead of funding.
And you go down, what is annualized cost T-TAC? T-TAC, same,
Oh,
academy start date, the annualized cost is T-TAC, approximately.
probably totals.
Is it
Yeah, I think
total?
it's probably meant to be total.
During the hiring, vacancies?
Yeah, there's a lot of typos. I tell you what, I'll go through carefully.
Well, some of them
Send
also.
to you.
Yeah,
Some of
yeah,
these are
yeah.
not on.
Keep.
I had one more question
Mhm.
about improved police response. It says that they budgeted 3 million, but then it says ongoing but deferred to 2018. Then it says deferred to 2019.
Due to the hiring delay, the 2016-17 one-time savings of sworn vacancies of 3.26 billion are recommended to fund other one-time public safety proposals. Is that what you mean?
Well, it was the last two columns where it's deferred, so, but that's the explanation of it, I see.
Yeah, the explanation is in the
That might be-
asterisks, in the description.
That might be okay.
And that's fine.
And that's a fine.
That's fine.
And then, you know.
They didn't do it.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, a couple of those things like that, I mean, if they, that's reality. They-
Right.
Some of it was caused by they didn't get the amount of taxes they expected, and therefore.
Our number is the 26 million, so whatever was actually collected, that's
Yes.
what we gotta do. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what was projected or
Sure.
what they thought.
Yeah.
So if these things, if they couldn't do it because there
Well, I
wasn't
mean,
money, fine.
it's in here because that was the information we had to
Yeah,
start with,
and-
right?
But it's good,
No.
good
Reality
information to
is-
put out there that, hey, say, because they didn't get the
the
funds, they
revenue.
couldn't do, you know, other things, so.
Could we get a total of what was spent?
Yes, that's actually something, I've already asked that question, but I will write it down here.
I mean, it's all related, you know. And then the last one I had anyway, is near the bottom, improved crime solving. Blah, 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 and then down at the bottom, costs assume a January 1st, 2017 start date, annualized costs total 420.
Mhm.
So for the first year, is it only 210, and that's all we gotta
'Cause
deal with
it's-
right now?
Yeah, because it was a partial collection, so it didn't start at the beginning of the fiscal year, it started only halfway through the fiscal year.
So the 420 doesn't really matter, it means next year they'll want 420,
Right.
that's what they're saying. Okay, so, but we don't have to deal with that right now.
Right.
Great, okay, thank you.
And there's no other typos? Just asking. These are smaller, these are easier to read. The big
Crime.
fat ones are where you're like,
Crime, CR,
where?
crime.
Second,
Improved
second
crime.
line, crime and intelligence.
Sorry, I used to do this to my kids when they were teenagers.
Oh,
There you go.
no, that's good. Okay.
Excel, there is a spell check.
Uh,
There is, no, there is.
yeah, no, but
So-
I'm saying
no,
this
so-
version is not. This
Yeah,
is
yeah,
not
so
mine.
I mean, yeah, I mean, if you get the Excel file.
It's based off of my initial version, it's not my version.
Are we clear where we're going with this? I'm not.
You've got all the changes there.
I've got all the changes and all the questions, yeah.
When do you think you would get any kind
Response.
of input?
I'm hoping to get some clarification on at least the question I already put in, which is this one about this thing here and the total amount, because it's the questions I've already asked, by next, in time for the neighborhoods commission
Okay,
meeting.
can
so.
I throw something out and we'll just go throw this out? I realize we all get demands on our time and stuff like that. We had a meeting after the last neighborhood commission meeting. If we got additional data from Sabrina for the neighborhood, could we possibly have another meeting after the neighborhood commission for about an hour or so to go over that? I'm concerned we're losing time here, and we keep chewing up stuff. And we are, for the most part, most of us are there at the neighborhood commission meeting. Maybe we could, you know, piggyback on that. I don't know, just throwing that out. I'd be amenable to
I'm
that.
happy to
I'm
stay.
okay with that.
I think it's vital for us to keep moving, so yeah. Already lost Valentine's anyways.
You haven't sent me?
Yeah.
Rich is like, damn
Might
it,
be trouble.
Yeah.
fine.
I personally want to commit, I just need to check
No, no.
with my wife.
No, and that's,
Because it's Valentine's Day,
Valentine's
which is
Day.
the worst thing
Which I
ever.
don't know if that's gonna,
Next
you'll
week, yeah.
see my appearance.
This
but
is-
I'll check
this
it
is
out.
after the neighborhood commission meeting.
Valentine's Day.
Oh.
Instead of
It's on
getting-
Valentine's
save
Day?
it a little
Valentine's
bit.
Day.
Oh, man.
Hallmark holiday, never. Non-official,
Is there a-
recognized federal holiday, so we don't get the day off.
Is there
No.
a due date for our report? Can you ask that question too? I like deadlines, you know. if
And
they
so
need
you guys
this-
know, like, these questions all go into the minutes. So
That's fine.
you should be,
Yeah, and
you
that's
should
why I
be
say-
able to
That's why we
confirm
should
that
have a
that's right, yeah.
review here,
Yeah.
wrap up tonight, please.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
just recap and, because we covered a lot of ground tonight.
I believe the answer is, according to the ballot measure, no. Is there some other due date that someone's expecting? That one I can't answer for you.
Well,
I
are
mean,
there-
I can't answer right now, I'm saying we have this
I've always
one to go
been
back and
confused
ask.
on what does an oversight committee do and are there rules about this? I assume that if you promise the state of California that there will be oversight, that there are some rules about how that operates, or some customs or whatever, and there must be a due date. I mean, they don't want to wait 20 years and then somebody pulls some analysis out of wherever they pull it out. And, I mean, there's got to be some timeliness here to this, and I'm just confused as to what that is. You know, I viewed it as, you know, we got till June 30th to do it. It's a full year after this budget book closed. And we should be able to put
Get it
there.
done by then.
Get it done by then, yeah. And if not then when? You know, is there no deadline? Does this just float? You know, what are they
I'll
looking for?
find out.
Right, thank you. Little frustration, as you can see.